Good evening, or should I say top of the evening to you, and happy St. Patrick's Day. This is District Reports. We'll put that aside, and this is District Reports. And our show this evening is Making Madison an Equitable City. I'm Susan Hamblin, and we have two guests with us this evening. We have 17th District Alderperson Joe Clausius. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
And we have Director of the Department of Civil Rights, Lucia Nunez, and welcome to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting.
Oh, you're welcome. Office of Civil Rights.
Sure.
You have some commissions that serve under you.
Absolutely.
And you're a member of
The Affirmative Action Commission.
which is a part of the Office of Civil Rights.
Yes.
We actually have three commissions that we work with, three main commissions. The Affirmative Action Commission is one, and they look at everything that the Affirmative Action Division does in terms of contract compliance, any of the targeted business programs, any of the Aspire internships, et cetera, affirmative action plans that the city is required to fulfill for state and federal purposes. Then we have the Equal Opportunities Commission, which works with the Equal Opportunities Division, and that's the division that investigates complaints of discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodations. And then we have the Commission on People with Disabilities, and that looks at accessibility, not only in city services, city facilities, sidewalks, roadways, et cetera, for people with disabilities. And that works with our program on Disability Rights and Services program.
Thank you for that definition. So we have a little bit of background. This is going to be a program of definitions, because the very first thing I want to talk about, and many people confuse, is equity versus equality. And we do have a slide, and I'm hoping they get that up right now. And it's just a great slide. It's showing, we have it right here in front of us, three boys, different heights, trying to see over a fence. And the boxes in the first one, they're all equal size. The second one, you're meeting the needs of the person to achieve their goal of looking over the fence. And so equity is just and fair inclusion into a society in which all, including all racial and ethnic groups, can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. Equity gives all people a just and fair shot in life, despite historic patterns of racial and economic exclusion.
That's right.
So I mean, being short, I love the fact that he got two, and many times children will say, how come it's not fair? Well, that's that equity piece.
And in Madison, we were one of the first communities to pass the Equal Opportunity Ordinance. So
And when was that passed?
1963. So a year before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. 64. So we were there in terms of looking at employment and making sure that people had, that equality was in place, right? People had a fair shot at applying for jobs, at applying for housing, at entering places of public accommodation. The whole set of laws that were created for that were very strong, because what are the images that you think about back in the 60s and 50s where whites only.
Right, and so much of that is coming to our forefront with the anniversary of Selma and things like
Absolutely.
that.
So 50 years, we've got 50 years of equality. Now we have to take a look at it one step further. And the city has chosen to make a focus on racial equity and social justice. In part because, remember the context of this, a couple of years ago, the Race to Equity report that the Wisconsin Council on Children and Families put out. Justified Anger, Reverend Alex G's response. There was a series of things that came out, and the concentration is, look, even after 50 years, we still have a long ways to go.
Things aren't equitable.
Things are not changing in the way we are needing to move the needle. And there's some things that we can't point, we've got to look at our own house and put our own house in order, the city that is.
Right, and I think that's what we're going to talk about tonight. It's a two-prong approach. And one is each department, division, has to look at how they're going about their business, and are they able to serve the public equitably. Some of the questions, and the reason it came to my attention is I'm a poll worker, and part of our training then was to give everybody that's approaching us as we say in some of the training I've had in my other job is we're not presuming anything. We are accepting the person as they're coming in. So positive intentions. The questions that the clerk's office was asking, is the system working as it was designed to work? What do we have the power to influence? And what would equity look like in our work? So the departments and divisions were looking at their work and are they meeting the needs of who they serve in an equitable fashion? So that's a process. In each department, you can maybe expand on this. Each department had to look at what they were doing.
Sure, there's a Racial Equity Social Justice Initiative team. There's representatives from pretty much every single department is represented on that team.
And they're very involved.
Very involved.
I've worked with them.
Then there are department teams, just like you said, the city clerk's office has a team that really is trying to examine what is it that they do, how do they serve the public, and then what is it that they can do.
What can they influence, right?
What can they influence to maybe change those boxes like you were showing on the screen? Do some constituents, do some people need an extra box? And what does that extra box look like? Right. So for instance, might there be language? Might there be extra assistance on filling out certain kinds of permits, et cetera? So how can they do that? And the city clerk's office is one of the first agencies to really examine that and then examine it with their poll workers, with the election officials, et cetera.
They're right at the point of it, really, the forefront.
Yes, they were the first to jump on the bandwagon and say, let's look at our work and get more people in to vote. I mean, that's their objective. And do we have barriers that's not allowing the people to come and vote?
Absolutely.
So opening more times and more training for poll workers, again, to presume positive intentions when people come to vote.
I can add my wife is also a poll worker and just started this past year. She was very impressed with the training, the preparation beforehand. She felt very comfortable. Her first time was the primary a few weeks ago on here, and she enjoyed it.
Yes, yes. And I know when I met with Metro director, talking about some of the things that they were looking at as well. I don't know if you can expand on any of some of their results or not, but when are we going to get the feedback that they've made changes and the constituency can see it? Or is it going to be just kind of a slow change over time?
I think it really depends agency per agency, because in some agencies like the clerk's office, you've got such a customer base that there's out there, either people needing to vote or getting licenses, et cetera. Metro, you also have a real significant customer base, which is the riders of Metro buses. And it's a huge department. So what does equity or what does this initiative look like in Metro is going to be very different than the clerk's office. For some, it has to do with hiring. And so all sorts of hiring practices are being looked at and saying, okay, what's going on? So for instance, we get feedback from certain departments that say, well, when I look at the interview panel and look at who's coming to interview for a certain position, it's, it doesn't reflect the diversity of this community. So what do we need to do? So they can't hire if those applicants aren't reflecting that diversity. So then we have to go one step or further upstream to be able to figure out where in recruitment has something fallen apart. So each agency is really taking a look at how does this work for themselves? What is it that they need or want to focus on?
I'm going to ask a question. You did say, if I heard correctly, that they cannot hire if it doesn't reflect the demographics of the city. Is that?
Well, I'm saying if their applicant pool does not reflect the demographics of the city, they're not going to be able to hire diversity, even though that may be a goal. So they may need to go.
It won't meet the goals.
It won't meet the goal.
No.
Oh, I thought maybe they had to stop until they had a panel of that reflects the demographics of the city.
The applicant pool, the people applying for jobs, does not reflect the diversity of the city.
Right.
So do we need to do a different kind of recruitment is what I'm
Right. Do they have to stop though on their hiring process, or can they go forward?
No, they could continue, but there are managers who are saying, I want to go deeper. I want to
Yes.
go further out and figure
They
out.
make adjustments.
Yep,
It's the best,
absolutely.
best way to say.
All
Yeah,
right. All right. I just wanted clarification
Okay.
on that. I wasn't sure if I heard that correctly. Any other comments about the internal before we go to the community? Anything else you'd like to add about each department looking at how they do their business?
Well,
Yeah,
I
we're
just-
go ahead.
I just wanted to add, let's see, pretty much we kind of analyze policies first. We're really in the implementation now, the training of employees. It's
We've-
safe to say on here with it. Yeah.
There are three major areas that we're looking at equity: in operations, in
Operation,
city
yep.
policies,
Policies.
and budget. So that's the second one. And then the third is the
The
community.
community, right.
Okay.
So there's all sorts of, there's a lot of training that's happening, trying to get a core of people who can continue to do the training and get the word out to other city
I'm signed
employees.
up for the training, by the way.
That's right.
And the
As a member of the commission or as an alder?
as an alder on here.
Okay.
Well, the commission too on
I
here.
didn't know if the commission
Yeah.
had to go through that.
I mean, I'm a city employee, as
Right.
you know, as an alder on here with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I believe it's a series of 4.
Yeah.
And the first 2 are completely full, which is a positive
Yeah.
sign. I couldn't even sign up until the 3rd one on
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So it has been embraced.
And we're
by
at
employees.
capacity in terms
Right.
of having trained trainers be able to implement those
Oh.
Yep.
trainings. So
Yep.
that's what we're trying to get.
Train the trainers first.
Yeah, train the
Sure.
trainers first, and then start offering these out, because the demand is just the demand for presentations. What is equity? What is RESGAI? What does that stand for? What is, what are we doing here? 2, then I want to get trained deeper. What does that mean?
Right.
So we're getting all of that demand, and we are just getting the training ourselves. So
Now jumping, anything else
Nope,
before we
that's
move
it.
on? Now
Nope.
we'll jump to the community, and I think maybe because of past incidences in the past couple weeks, the training might be actually moving forward even at a faster
yeah,
clip, because we realize we have to talk about some issues.
absolutely.
And let's go with that. What's the next step? Equity impact model, what is that?
The equity impact tool, is that,
And the equity lens?
yes,
The lens.
yes,
Okay.
I
So-
call it the lens.
Oh, you
Right.
call
Right.
it the lens. I was
Yeah,
reading.
right,
I,
yeah.
I was
Okay,
reading
yeah.
the report, and they had
Good.
all these
Oh,
different
good.
terms. So,
So
the
there-
equity impact model, I had a question about an equity lens.
yeah.
So, okay.
So the equity lens and tool, some people
Okay.
call it one or the other, is we've got a couple versions that are out already. It's good critical thinking skills.
Okay.
How to apply it to the idea for a new fire station, okay? Let's ask good questions. Let's figure out who's at the table. Let's see who's involved in the discussion. It's a way to analyze a particular project, a particular policy, to really get at, is this, what's the equity impact of this?
I use it constantly. An example is right in my district, a new splash pad for it. That's available to the entire community on there, free of charge on it. And
So it's in the budget to put in a splash pad
it
in your
exists.
district.
It already
Oh,
exists.
it already exists.
We
So how
opened it
did you
last
get
fall.
around to where it was located?
On it. That was a matter of citing where the greatest need for it was, and they do require quite a large amount of space. It had to be in a large community park.
But you're talking about
Right.
the people at the table then that would ask questions as who needs it, where is it located, how can you access it, is it equitable
Right.
and
Many-
accessible to
Well,
people?
it encourages diversity. Swimming pools, splash pads, anything like that for it. I mean, it meets equity on here for it. The skate park will be the same thing that will be built this summer at Central Park, which
Central
also will
Park.
be free
Yes.
on here for it. Yeah,
Well,
it's
swimming
available
pools
to
aren't
all.
free.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
So is
splash
it-
pads are though.
yes, yes.
Big difference there.
Yes,
Yeah,
there is.
Yeah.
And many times I think what happens is we come up with great ideas in a meeting.
Yeah.
On the 3rd floor of this building, somewhere in one of the conference rooms, we're sitting together, staff and some community perhaps, but then do we take that idea and really get it, get the community involved? Do we get all the right elected officials? Do we get all the right city agencies? So maybe the Department of Civil Rights has a great idea, but do we have engineering involved? Do we have, who's at the table? And some of the questions and the tools and the lens, as you said, really get at asking those good questions.
And will it reach the right people?
Will it
in
reach the right
community?
people? Is this the right idea for the time being? I mean, there's lots of good questions that help us analyze and see if this is, if we're going about this in the right way.
So does each department then have someone that goes through this training that can ask those questions if they're
We're still in the
about
process.
something?
We're still in the process of training people on the tool. I mean, that's part of that. Back to the training that we were discussing.
And you receive some of the, you yourself, before we launched this, received some of the training from Portland and Seattle?
Absolutely,
Or
we've
something?
had we've
You
had
want to
people.
expand on that?
Sure. We had people from Seattle and Portland. We had people from the Government Alliance on Racial Equity.
Several times the
Yep,
Portland people
that's right.
came here.
So you were also involved with Children and Families, state or not? The Department of Children and Families. So where did this
This is a
report-
city initiative on
Okay,
here. Yeah.
okay. I didn't know
Yeah.
about the report, where that actually came from, your 2013 report?
Which report? The one that
Race to Equity.
that's from the Wisconsin Council on Children and Families. They're an
Okay.
independent
Yeah.
nonprofit that does think tank type reports.
Okay,
So
okay.
they're the ones that Race to Equity report established. There was a great deal of statistics about
Yes.
unemployment,
Yes.
graduation rates, et cetera, of African
It's
Americans.
a lot of reading.
Page after
Absolutely.
page after page.
Exactly.
Right,
So
yeah.
it's that report that really gave a lot of impetus to a lot of community
Discussion
movements,
and
from
debate.
Alex G's Justified Anger to that coalition to a number of others. And it's because of that that we really started inside the city thinking, what do we need to do to make sure we're not contributing to these numbers? How do we, of the systems that we have control over in our own house, to say, what is
What
it
do
that
we have
can do?
influence? What do we have influence to?
Exactly.
To do and to make changes. The equity issue is not just city, though. It's also Dane
Absolutely.
County. And I
Oh,
think
no.
the report really addressed much of it as a Dane County, not necessarily just city. So then where do we bring the school district in?
Well, the Dane County has their racial equity social justice initiative. So they're also working on this at the same time that we are. They have staff that are dedicated to doing all the same sort of parallel work.
And I believe the county public health department is very involved as well.
Right, city, county,
City,
public
county.
health. Yep,
We
absolutely.
have most of the Madison Out of School initiative on here.
That's true.
Right.
That's
yeah.
true. We have
which I always like to feel is a part of this on here.
And what was
Really
that
is to
again, Joe? I'm
result.
sorry.
The Madison Out of School
Out.
initiative. I believe
Sure.
I'm saying that right on here for it.
Okay.
We have had 2 very successful meetings with elected officials, school district, to really start digging deeper at this. And the school district has their own initiative. And so they're working on a series of things. But you're absolutely right. There has to be really very conscious and meaningful dialogue and collaboration for this to work. And I look at it best as hiring. So the city hires. We have 3,000 plus employees, seasonal, part-time, you name it, right? Well, if we want to hire our own people from this community, we have to have a good partnership with the school district. We have to create internships, practicums, whatever, for high school students to see what it's like to work in the city of Madison. And we have to create partnerships with Madison Area Technical College
Correct.
and really think about that possible training and that they can be a partner in this. It can't just be us. It's got to be a collaboration
Right.
with the students that are graduating from our Madison schools, possibly going to Madison Technical College or the UW system,
Yep.
and then how do we make sure that they can get great employment with the city of Madison?
Well, the Wanda Fulmore
Absolutely.
initiative we've got
Yep.
on here,
Right.
targeting young people in high school for the
Right.
job. Actually, the city is the employer
Yeah.
for these people
right.
on
Yes,
here.
yes.
For it, it's worked out real well.
But over time, there just seems to be, like you mentioned, the initiative the school district had, and the city has, and the county has. We have to bring people together because, like the public health department is now city and county. It's one department because of the transparency of the lines, and you step over here and you're in another
Right.
community municipality. So how are we bringing those initiatives together?
There's a lot of collaboration. I mean, the public health county person comes to the core team meetings and the strategy team meetings, and there's constant
The
sharing.
neighborhood resource teams, for example, is collaboration
Okay.
on here with it, with the county and the city on here for it. I mean, there's so many parts to this
There's so many parts, and that's what I
initiative on
think is
here.
getting
Yep.
the water's just a little bit of muddiness to them, because another question that came to mind is, does every decision then go through your office for this lens or not? Or the training of the people in the office to get that lens?
Absolutely. The training,
Versus-
we've got
yeah.
a core group of people that have been trained, and they're doing training of trainers to make sure that we build that capacity.
Right.
Both on the concepts, the racial equity, social justice concepts, like the slide that you presented, plus the tool, how to use the tool, how best. Then we're doing a lot of evaluation, because let's say you and I use the tool, but we forget something. We want to make sure that we've got other people kind of watching us.
Is it like a rubric that you check off?
It's great questions. It's, the questions that you absolutely go
Okay.
through and really have to think about, and perhaps step back. You think you're moving along, and it's like, well, wait a minute, who's missing from this conversation?
Okay.
Who do
There's
we
so
need
many
to
parts
contact?
to it.
So there is a checklist, so to
Yep.
speak.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
All right.
I'd like to mention, for instance, Ban the Box. That was something the city took the initiative on. What that actually is on city employment applications, things like that. Have you had a prior conviction for something? That used to be right at the head of most questionnaires, job applications. We would screen out people that maybe had made a mistake, mistaken judgment in their use, something like that. We literally were screening people out that could and have become very good employees for us.
So then
Now
what
it's
was
only
the change? What was
we,
the
we took out that question asking, have you had any prior convictions? And when it does come back in, is if it would be relative to the actual job being
Right.
offered. Which,
Right.
but I mean, legally, I think you would have to ask it then for it.
Well, that's good to know.
but
That's a
but that's
concrete
an
example
individual
of what you're
piece
doing.
Right.
of
Right.
this. It's a lot of little things add up on here with it.
Okay.
That's all part of this initiative.
There's also, I read in the report, Race to Equity report, there's a perception and reality of Madison area being very progressive, and how is it stated? There's a paradox between reality and reputation. Place that's so prosperous, resourceful, and progressive is also the home to profound, pervasive, and persistent racial disparities. How do you address that?
There are two Madisons.
Yep, there are.
Absolutely. Complete two Madisons. And how we as a community rise up to this challenge and not deny that there are two Madisons, not look the other way, or not say it's not relevant to me.
Blinders on.
And put
Yes.
blinders on. I think if we don't do those things, I think we have an opportunity to do something great. If we keep those blinders on and say, I don't know what they're talking about, or we start to perhaps rationalize or demonize, I
Right.
think then we're in trouble.
Or trying to say, yes, we sort of do that, or that kind
Yeah.
of thing. What are our next steps?
Right.
What are the next steps?
There are a lot of next steps on it. Let me
Joe?
give you an example. The tragedy
Yes.
that we had a few weeks ago in Madison on here. Unlike some other cities, Ferguson, New York, Milwaukee on here, The protests, the concerns were peaceful, they were orderly. People were trying to come together, all races, to find out what's wrong with Madison, what kind of solutions, how can we move
The
on.
perception versus
Right,
reality.
and both Lucy and I attended Tony's funeral this past Saturday on there for it, and it was quite moving, quite profound. Rather than a time of despair, I came out of there with a feeling of healing and hope. This is something to give us some impetus to move forward on here with it.
Okay.
And I think we're moving in the right direction
And
with
what do
that
you
on
hope
here.
to have?
On it. So, well, for one thing, I want to try and do away with injustices, social injustice on here, and any type of racial inequity on here. And you have to start someplace with our initiative with it. We've got to get people sitting down, talking together, all races, employments, people like that on here, and find out what's wrong, what are we doing wrong, where can we move on from here with it,
City Council.
and then go ahead and do it on here.
Right.
Don't just talk about it.
Yes,
Yep.
very true. Act upon your decisions.
Right.
City Council passed something last year. Let me see if I can find my notes.
Oh, okay.
From that Race to Equity report, December,
Well, ban the box was part of that.
Ban the Box was part of it.
That was part of it,
Okay. October 2013, you had a racial justice summit.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, council adopts a resolution to adopt an equity impact model, which is that lens you were talking about.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And do you have any targets for, benchmarks as to what you want to accomplish at certain times after you pass that?
All I can say right now, I as an individual alder, I try everything I do, my actions on the council, to use the equity lens. Is this going to benefit? Is this going to make a positive change on here with it?
Okay.
And I feel most council members are doing the same thing
And I think,
with it. Yeah.
right, go ahead.
Data is a huge piece to the equity,
Yep.
to this initiative. We're in the process of trying to hire a data coordinator that would work with the team, because we need to take a look. Again, we're looking internally to see what is it that the city has an impact on?
That was
What do
in the
we
budget.
do?
I remember
And
that.
then we need to measure those things and then say, okay, this is how we want to move
So
the
your
needle.
data's going to drive your
Data's got to drive what-
next steps.
Yeah, what our next steps are. And that's a huge piece. So
Right.
we've got two major pieces out there, the data coordinator and the equity coordinator, that are going to be part of this team. And how do we use data to hold ourselves accountable is huge.
And I think more people are relying on data to, as a school teacher, to, tell us what to do about instruction and things like that. We have to use what's in front of us instead of
Right.
ignoring it or putting blinders on.
Exactly.
We are out of time.
Oh, already.
How fast it goes,
Yeah.
but it's such a timely topic, and
Yes,
I
it
thank
is.
both
Yep.
of you for coming
No
and
problem.
looking
you.
internally at what we are doing as a city and as an area,
Yep.
and adjusting equity, which is not necessarily equality.
That's
It's
right.
equity.
That's right.
So
Thank you.
thank you both for coming.
Thank you for the
You're
invite.
welcome.
Those who have
please.
watched this show this evening, stay tuned for City Council, which immediately follows this, and be safe tonight. And as always, with this warm weather, and it may, it's a little bit less than warm as it was yesterday, but watch out for children as they are out and about in the streets, and don't forget to buckle up for safety. Thank you, and good night.